Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is the 6th and final episode of my blueberry series. If you haven't watched the first videos, I'll link them right here. The first 4 were about picking out blueberries and basic information about blueberries and planting them in containers or the ground. The 5th one was about propagation, and I'm going to do a follow-up video for that. That's what episode 6 will be. We're going to take a look at the tray of blueberries that I had stuck in this little hoop house right here, and then also take a look at them in another technique I used in that video. So be sure to watch episode 5 or this will be of no value to you, but I want to talk about how to overwinter them. And after they start to get some roots on them, we do need to fertilize them. So I want to walk you through that as well. I don't ever fertilize cuttings when I'm sticking them. There really doesn't seem to be any point in it. They don't have roots to actually take up any nutrients anyway, but once they start to root, I do fertilize them, and you can see this little granular fertilizer here that I use in my nursery and in my garden center. It's very similar to Osmocote. If you wanted to just get Osmocote, which you can get at any box store, most garden centers would have it as well. And we're just gonna broadcast a little bit of this over each of the blueberry plants. So here's the flat of blueberries in the little mist house. Put these in toward the end of June, and this whole flat is rooted. I had one cell that didn't root right there, so I got 49 out of 50. They're only partially rooted. I can tug on them and they don't want to come out, but I think the soil would fall off of them if I actually tried to transplant them now. So they're going to have to be overwintered in this flat. Like I said, I did not fertilize these when we initially put them in, so I need to do that, and I also need to take this flat out of the greenhouse. I want to show you some that I had actually stuck a little later. This group on the end of this flat I stuck in an episode of my backyard propagation series, and I didn't stick these until later in August, and they are definitely very calloused. They look fantastic, but they're definitely not rooted yet, and it was really kind of too late to root them. I have the option of bringing in some sort of heat mat and putting this flat on a heat mat for the next few months, and I think that would get them rooted. This one right here next to it has pushed a couple little roots. It's resisting coming out, so it's got something holding it in there. So they're about to root, but that August date was really almost too late. Mid-July is probably the cutoff for these semi-hardwood cuttings to get them rooted in the same season. Like I said, I'm about to pull this flat out. It's middle September now. I'm going to fertilize it. I'm going to stick it under the edge of my deck where it's in a little bit of shade. The fertilizer should kick in and get these rooted in a little better. When we start getting freezes in my area, which will be toward the end of October or the beginning of November, I'm actually going to stick it back in this house. I'm in zone 7B, and I think I can actually overwinter this flat just in this little hoop house that's plastic covered. I'm going to use a piece of cotton fabric over the top of all the flats that I put in this house. Probably do the same thing in zone 7A. I'm just going to cut a piece off a larger piece that we use at the nursery to overwinter plants. If you're in zone 6, I would recommend putting a seed heating pad underneath the flats in the house and not doing the cotton cover. Just come back in the same plastic house and set them on top of a seed germinating heat mat and get a thermostat to attach that to, and I think that would keep them plenty warm. I think in zone 5 though, that may not be a good option either. It may have to come into the garage, but we do need to leave them in a humid place. They cannot come inside a building where heat is running, because that lack of humidity would definitely desiccate them and dry them out over the course of the winter. So here's the flat taken out of the greenhouse. Here's my fertilizer, and I'm actually just gonna very gently sprinkle this over this tray. I probably wanna get 3, 4, maybe 5 prills in each cell. And I think that will be totally adequate. I think you can see that down close there. This cell right here actually, well, I ended up with about 7 or 8 in a couple of them, but that should be fine. This is a slow release fertilizer. I would just recommend you get Osmocote, which is a 3 or 4 or 5 month fertilizer. That'll be absolutely perfect for this application because you won't end up burning them. We're just trying to get a little bit of a burst of rooting so that they're fully rooted when they go back into the house to overwinter. So here's the more simple method I had used in that video on propagating blueberries. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of about 15 rooted in this little dome method. I've had this little dome piece over it through the 2.5 months that these were stuck. I made a major miscalculation in this, and it's something I should have known. I've been doing this long enough to know I haven't had to water this thing one time, not one time the entire summer. And although I want to hold the moisture in, and you can see there's moisture in here now and it's dripping down on the plants, I do want to hold the moisture in. I actually think I did too good of a job of holding the moisture in, and I rotted some of the cuttings. So next year, I'm going to use the same exact method, and I'm going to drill 6 or 8 holes in the top of this cover, and I think that's going to vent it just enough to where I'll have to water it about every 2, maybe 3 weeks. And I think that exchange of air is going to vastly increase my success in this box. So that was my error. And you learn something every time you do these kinds of things. 8 out of 15 or 16 is not terrible for the first time in a new type of propagation box like this, but I think that can definitely be increased by getting a little bit of air exchange inside that box. So there you go. We had tremendous success in the mist house, which I knew we would. That's the best way to root cuttings that time of year. Those kind of semi-hardwood cuttings, a little lesser success in the other box, but I think improvements can be made to that. Again, if you've rooted blueberries this season, go ahead and get them out of the house for the next month and a half or so. Get them in a good bright spot, but not in direct sun. Get a little fertilizer on them. When the weather turns cold enough to start freezing those cells, get them back into your house. If you're in zone 7, 8, or 9, I don't think you're really going to need to offer a whole lot of additional protection. Make sure you drain the pipes in your house so that there's no water inside of them. In zone 7, I'm going to probably put a cotton cloth over top of the flats that I put back into that house. In zone 6, I think you would probably want to get a heat mat and put under them, and then put a thermostat on it, because we actually want to keep them cool. We don't want to run that heat mat all the time. I don't want to keep that greenhouse 60 or 70 degrees. We want to keep it 35 to 40 if we could, just not below freezing. If you're in zone 5, I think you're going to want to not use the hoop house in the winter and bring them into your garage. Hopefully it's a humid space that you don't run heat in. If you run heat in your garage, you run the risk of drying out your cuttings, which would definitely be an issue. One other thing, this hoop house is at a really tall angle like this, and so any snow that I don't get a lot of snow in my area, but if you're in an area that gets a lot of snow, snow's going to slide directly off of this one. I'm not too worried about it being crushed. It's a very poorly built greenhouse, but I don't think it'll be crushed by snow just because of the angle. If you built a house that was more like this and more of a wider dome, snow has the potential to crush it flat. So keep that in mind. You either need to get out early in the morning and get the snow off of it, or come up with an alternative other than keeping them in your greenhouse. So anyway, thank you for watching this update on the blueberry propagation. Hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos, and also comment below with any questions you have about rooting blueberries. Thanks for watching.